Well, hello, everyone. This is John Dupuy again, and this is Spiritual Technologies 2.0. And this thing just keeps getting more exciting and more interesting. I thought I knew a lot about this stuff until I started interviewing some of these people. And today we have with us Eric Thompson, who's an old comrade and helped us start iAwake Technologies and produced a lot of the seminal tracks that I continue to use in my daily practice. Thank you, Eric. And I just want to read this little bio of Eric, so I can't say this as concisely, and this will put Eric in context, and so you'll know really what's going on and why we're speaking about with them. And let me again say that the point of Spiritual Technologies 2.0, and by the way, Javi Otero is with us, CTO of iAwake Technologies from Spain, and is to explore how emerging technologies can deepen and enhance our spiritual practice so that we can wake up, grow up, clean up, and show up. So here we go. So this is the bio of Eric Thompson. Eric, founded by researcher and inventor Eric Thompson, former co-founder of iAwake Technologies and creator of the Profound Meditation Program, Subtle Energy Sciences, SES, is committed to bringing digital energy medicine to the 21st century. Since 2007, Eric Thompson has been researching and developing proprietary methods for producing and capturing subtle energies in digital form. The captured energetic signals are then amplified many times using proprietary technology and embedded into various digital media. The resulting subtle energy technology is among the most powerful technology available. And because of its unique, cost-effective production and delivery methods, SES is now able to make available to the public genuinely transformative tools for personal and collective change at a fraction of the cost of other subtle energy technologies with similar capacity. Hi, Eric.
Hello, John.
That's a lot, man. So do you want to just kind of give us a little bit of why the heck you did this and why you've become this force in the field of developing subtle energy for healing, waking up, transformation, lots of stuff?
Sure. Well, roughly it's been about 12 years ago now. After years of lots of suffering, I finally was able to come to a place where I knew that I needed to have and take up a real daily spiritual practice. I needed something that could cut through the chaos that I experienced just about every day. And leading up to that point, obviously I had done tons of reading. I'd read enough to make you blue in the face, and I realized that all that reading wasn't doing me any good, It wasn't enough to have all that head knowledge. I had experimented with various types of meditation technologies a couple of years previously. I'd been in and out of various spiritual circles, including Christian circles and other types of circles. I'd studied transpersonal psychology and lots of philosophy. And as I said, I really struggled a lot in my adult life. I went through several years of homelessness. I spent probably about a year in homeless shelters. I spent probably a little over a year on the streets, about a year and a half, something like that. And not all this time was I on drugs or alcohol. Some of that time I was. I spent about another year and a half, another year living in a tent, and another year and a half living in my van. And through all this time, when I went through the homeless part, I was really searching my soul and taking that extra time that I had to read as much as I could. And eventually I came to this conclusion that I needed to have a real spiritual practice. And I was drawn to this idea of meditation, but like many people, I did not know how to sit still for more than 5 or 10 minutes at a time. And in fact, I remember the first time I meditated for 15 minutes, I was like, wow, that was a miracle, you know. But eventually what happened was I just went through enough suffering that I was able to come to that resolution. In fact, it was either take up a spiritual practice or I'm going to kill myself. So, you know, practice or die.
Yeah, I completely relate, Eric. And the first time we met, we started sharing something about our lives, and it was definitely pain and suffering and suicidal depression that got me on the cushion, so to speak.
Yeah, you know, and in that sense, it becomes a blessing. So thankfully, I was able to heed the call and not take my own life. So when I first started back in 2004, I started with a Kundalini meditation, and I was also doing the Sedona method releasing. I was doing that a lot as well. And I was having all these breakthroughs, and I was reading Adida, Bhagwan Rajneesh, all kinds of Eastern texts and philosophy, transpersonal psychology, and having huge breakthroughs. And I thought, man, I've got it beat. You know, I got it beat. Yet at the same time, something told me that the path I had set on wasn't finished, and that I still had a lot to benefit from meditation. So that's when I remembered about 2 years earlier, I had experimented with Hemisync meditation CDs. And so at that time, I didn't have a lot of money, of course. So I happened to find in a local bookstore, I spent a lot of time in bookstores. That's one of the blessings you have with a lot of free time. You read a lot. And I found a 2 CD set by Jeffrey Thompson, and it was only $20. So I said, yeah, I'll do that. And I started using that every day for my meditations. And I was meditating at times, especially on the weekends, 3 or 4 hours. Mm-hmm. And man, I started having these breakthroughs again. And I was flying high actually for a while, feeling really good. And then at some point, I think, you know, the CDs weren't quite doing for me what they had once done. So I started looking, well, what else is out there? What else is available? And I started, that's when I became aware of HoloSync. And that was somewhere around the end of 2004, I think. And I, you know, managed to save the money to buy my first level of HoloSync, and I started using that. And I ended up using that for several years, and I had lots of success with that. It helped me in a lot of ways. Eventually, I got to the point where, you know, at that time, because I didn't have an education, I'd always fallen back on construction work mostly, and I did have several years' experience in the electrical trade. So I ended up getting a job again as an electrician, and started saving up my money again for more HoloSync. But I also wanted to go back to school, and I And when I got into school, I realized I wanted to study psychology, and I wanted to learn how to apply spiritual wisdom to technology in such a way that we could create technologies that could mirror back to us our highest states of consciousness and our highest spiritual capacities, to feed it back to us so that we could, in a sense, have this kind of organic spiritual technology that helps us develop our highest potential. And so I was able to get back into community college. I wound up as an undergraduate talking the psychology department into letting me do basically what ended up being a graduate level research study on brainwave entrainment. I designed the entrainment stimulus myself. I designed the study and funded most of it, and wound up being able to go publish the results of that and present them at the 2009 Western Psychological Conference in Irvine, California. I was a student presenter, of course, but I got to see Csikszentmihalyi there, the famous philosopher Flow.
Yeah, Flow man.
Flow. And also the gentleman who started who did the Stanford prison experiments. I got to meet him. I forget his last name. Starts with a Z. And anyway, it was a wonderful experience. And I realized from there that I really wanted to start studying transpersonal psychology. I wound up getting a full scholarship to Europe University, where I transferred there. And by that time, I had been making my own brainwave entrainment because I really just got fascinated with this idea of, I have used just about everything that was out there in terms of brainwave entrainment, as I'm sure you have too. And I just wanted to see what was available, what worked, what didn't work. And I just, something told me that if I applied myself, even though I didn't have any prior experience, that if I applied myself, I might be able to make an improvement on the technology. And I just felt like it was necessary. I felt like for the first time in my life, I had purpose, I had meaning, I had actual order. I still struggled with depression. At times, it still came every year. And even though I kept on with the meditation and the brainwave entrainment, and I heard from other people that when they used brainwave entrainment, that it solved their depression problems. It didn't fully solve mine for some reason. I don't know, but still, eventually I'd get back to normal. And when I was flying, doing really well, and using this every day, John, I just felt like it really potentiated what I had available inside me. I was, I ended up winning the All USA academic team, one of the top 20 students in the country. I mean, I was a high school dropout, problem child, and I got a full scholarship to Europe University, and I went there. That experience ended up being different than kind of what I expected. So I wound up leaving school there, and that was about the time you and I started in business with one another.
Yeah.
And I was still struggling with depression at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And but I continued to work on developing the brainwave entrainment and work on developing. At this time, I started graduating to the subtle energy technologies.
Yeah.
Now, I had first become aware of those way back in 1999. I read a magazine. You're probably aware of the company Tools for Wellness.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, back in
Patton started
back
that.
in the back in the 90s, they were known as Tools for Exploration, and I used to get their catalog, and that was an education in itself. Just to read all these different tech, I'd sit there and read that thing back to back, and there was one of the products they used to offer was this 10 CD series by a gentleman by the name of Norman McVeigh, who claimed that these CDs had various types of subtle energies recorded on them. Now, I was aware of the idea of subtle energy from my adolescent years when I was involved in martial arts, and I was involved in a school that claimed to have ties to the Shaolin Temple, and we practiced a meditation in that class called Yuan Qi. It was designed to build your Qi, and the first time we did that, I was a little freaked out because the guys in front of me were older guys, and they told me when I sat down, hey, untie your belt so you can breathe, because they're doing this big belly breathing, right? And they would inhale, the bellies would come out. They get to the point where they could take about as much as 30 seconds to inhale, hold it 30 seconds, and then exhale 30 seconds. And when they would exhale, their whole bodies would start to jerk up and down, like they were almost like they were levitating, and they would just start to pop up and down. And this is a little bit similar to some of the Siddha type meditations that they do in transcendental meditation, where they
kind of bounce,
popping up and down. But I was aware of subtle energy, and at times, my sensei would do things where they would project the chi and kind of project it towards my chest, and I could feel a sensation run down my arm, through my palms. Now, so at that point, although I hadn't seen any scientific validation, I saw enough for me to be convinced that there was something to it. Also, as a Christian, I had experienced what was called the baptism of the Holy Ghost. It was literally the immersion of the Holy Spirit. And there was this profound energetic awakening or transference that happened when I experienced it. It wasn't just an emotional, charismatic level type of thing. It was really something that was transpersonal. It was powerful. It awoke something within me. I began to have revelation within me, revelation insights, which to this day, a lot of the creativity that I feed on comes through this sense of just insight and revelation. And not like it comes all the time, but, and that's one of the powerful things that meditation has served. And look, if you're a creative person, you need to be meditating every day, because it is, I can tell you, since I've ventured into this whole arena of subtle energy, I've had to bring myself up to speed with current physics and the current research on subtle energy. And at first it seemed daunting. And I had to do all that while I was developing the technology. And at times I would just get stuck. And I would realize, you know what, you can't depend upon the intellect to make sense of all this stuff. You just go into meditation, let go, and let go to that higher source, and let that higher source feed you. And every time I do that, it works. It works.
Yeah, I can really relate to that, Eric. In fact, I can relate to a lot of the things you're talking about.
So what happened was, so I had tried these CDs by Norman McVeigh back in 2006, and I saw that they had potential, but they didn't seem particularly transformative at the time. They didn't seem particularly powerful. I had spent hundreds of dollars buying this very expensive amplification transducer thing that you hook into a CD player with one of their CDs in it to amplify the energy. And I can say humbly today that the technology that I've been blessed to develop replicates that times, at least to me, in my experience, times 10 or 20 or 100 without the transducer and without having to spend all the hundreds of dollars. It's something, but eventually, also in my meditation practice, John, and I forgot to mention this, before I went into business with you, I had practice various different types of meditation: mindfulness, shamatha, kundalini meditation, transcendental meditation. And I knew I wanted to, and I was still using the brainwave entrainment, but I knew that there was something more. I still wasn't going to that place and staying there that within myself in a way that I knew was possible. And I kept asking Spirit, please show me the way to go to that next level in my spiritual practice. And I met a gentleman who was a Shaktipat master. I received a Shaktipat initiation, long distance over the phone. So that's when the light kind of went off. I was like, wait a minute. So now we can combine spiritual initiation with technology. Mm-hmm. Because typically when you see Shaktipat initiations, you have to be there in person. But this was happening long distance.
Yeah.
And I'll have to tell you, for me, I started the first time I went into samadhi almost instantly, and I was staying there for hours at a time. And I was coming out with this just waves of bliss. And I mean, profound bliss. And sometimes it would get so palpable and so strong that I thought I was going to puke. I mean, it was just incredible. And that's when something told me, we need to develop a technology that does that. You know, the brainwave entrainment was wonderful for me. And to this day, I do know that it's still, it's helpful for a lot of different types of disorders as well, particularly ADHD. But I never could find any brainwave entrainment, including the brainwave entrainment I had developed, that could do that. And so I began experimenting with the subtle energy technology again. And basically, it's the idea, and again, for anybody who doesn't know, Shaktipat is the transference of spiritual energy, but spiritual intelligence, really awakening energy, the energy to awake, the energy of the master, transferred in such a way to the student that the student's higher energetic potentials, the higher bodies, the higher subtle and causal bodies, literally get turned on. They get switched on. Such that the student's ability to begin to receive this insight, to enter into these deeper states, to grok spiritual wisdom beyond intellect, becomes activated. And in almost every tradition, you see this. I mentioned it in Christianity, it's the baptism of the Holy Spirit. In Zen, it's transmission. In Sufism, it's getting literally drunk on the Spirit, drinking the wine of God. So you see this over and over and over again. And I became convinced that this was my path, such that I eventually became so obsessed with the subtle energy technology that, as you know, I started using it exclusively. And to make a long story short, sometime within that period, I don't know how long it took. I don't know how long it took, but I stopped getting depressed. I had not experienced major depression like that, where you get sucked into a black hole. But I continue to use this technology every day because it continues to have this uplifting effect to me that goes beyond just brainwaves. So in meditation, particularly transformative meditation, where you have profound meditative absorption, samadhi, profound bliss, not just a superficial type of bliss. When I went to Naropa, they would actually, one of the problems I had there was they would get angry at me and tell me I was on the wrong path because I was getting so blissed out during my Shaktipat meditations. And in their tradition, bliss means that you're trying to escape your misery. And one of the things I noticed that they did, all they did was talk about how miserable they were. And I realized that when I was in samadhi, what I was doing was letting go. And that's where the bliss was coming from. Anyway, all that said, when you're in that profound state of meditation like that, there's really a whole energetic gestalt. That's kind of the kind of sense it makes to me. There's a gestalt that's happening on the causal level, the subtle level, the gross level. And this is more than just the nervous system. It's more than just the brain. There are all kinds of subtleties going on. So my fascination is, how can we represent all those subtleties in an energetic patterns? And again, to make a long story short, we've discovered that we can capture subtle energies, real subtle energies, measurable subtle energies. Now, measurable in different kinds of ways. Okay, maybe not with electromagnetic instruments per se. And by the way, I want to say that there aren't, as far as I know, there aren't any modern instruments that can detect subtle energy directly. Certainly no electromagnetic instruments that can do that. I predict that if there ever comes a day where we can detect it directly, it'll only happen when the said technology is able to incorporate consciousness and life force energy into its matrix. And the reason for that is because subtle energy, what the research shows is that subtle energy is profoundly related to life force energy and consciousness. It responds to consciousness. It literally responds to consciousness.
Eric, are there any markers that you know of in the brain? I mean, when people are being exposed to these subtle energies, I mean, are there patterns that shift? You know, we were talking to Judith Pennington with Mind Mirror. I was wondering if there's anything that can be not the thing in itself, but people who are profoundly being influenced by this, they can show up.
Well, sure. You know, kind of finishing my statement there again, we don't have any instruments that necessarily detect subtle energy directly. I'm talking about modern conventional instruments. There is a reliable type of dowsing that in my experience works, because essentially what you're doing is you're using your chi body, your vital body. You know, we have multiple bodies. We have a physical body, a vital body, emotional body, mental body, several mental bodies actually, subtle body and causal body. And in different traditions, they have different names for those. And so when I say dowsing to a lot of people in the West, they think of mental dowsing, where you ask a question, and if the pendulum goes right clockwise, it's yes, and if it goes left, it's no. But essentially what's happening with that is you're projecting your mental body, and when you do that, the mental body has a subconscious, it has attachments and aversions, so you really don't, you can't, there are some mental dowsers that are incredibly accurate, but for most people, it can be tricky. There's another type of dowsing.
You don't know what you're getting.
Called energy dowsing or medical dowsing or physical dowsing. And in that, essentially, I won't go through the thing here for brevity, but essentially what you're doing is you're projecting the vital body. Now, and you're simply just focusing the vital body, and you're allowing the vital body to either enter into into resonance with the thing you're testing for or not. If it's present, your vital body will actually enter into resonance with it. And that's where disease comes from. It's where everything good or bad in our life comes from. We're entering into or out of resonance with things every day. And I believe that resonance is the ultimate language of the universe. It's the ultimate language. And essentially what our subtle energy technology is, it's very subtle resonance technology. So getting back to those markers, but what we don't have any instruments that can directly detect subtle energy, but they can detect markers of subtle energy, the effects of subtle energy. In fact, Um, it wasn't that long ago when we didn't even know if electromagnetism existed, but we could see its effects. We couldn't prove it existed because we couldn't detect it directly, but we could see its effects. And the same thing is true with subtle energy. Yes, when we use our various tools, with certain types of tools, for example, there's an instrument out there that's becoming quickly probably one of the most popular emerging tools for the study of subtle energy in biofield sciences. It's called gas discharge visualization. I think they're Konstantin Karakov from PhD scientist from Russia invented this, and I think they're starting to call it now biophotonic imaging. But essentially, what it does is it reads the acupuncture meridians in the tips of the fingers. And from this, it's able to make a composite picture of the health of the organ systems and of the biofield as a whole. And we're finding it's very accurate. And it's very, very, although it doesn't pick up subtle energy directly, it can show us the effects of subtle energy. So, for example, there was a study done on one of the, for example, the heart wave that I developed for you all, where Lisa Tully did this one, where someone listened to the CD and she did a pre and post, and the post showed that the biofilm was enlarged, the organ systems have been improved just from exposure to that. There are lots of other studies as well done using GDV. There's also instruments like heart rate variability. We can see changes happening in people.
Eric, I've played around with pendulums, and these things, they just start when I'm, and people are looking at it. Are you doing that? I said, I don't think so.
Yeah, sure.
And they move in these eerie patterns, and it's a strange.
That's a whole conversation in itself.
I have no idea what's going on, but it's
been a lot of research. So now, by the way, for people who think dowsing is woo-woo, there might be some dowsing out there that is woo.
Sure.
But I would invite people to keep an open mind. Now, when I got into all this, I was exposed. When you get into subtle energy, you're going to be exposed to a lot of belief systems, a lot of things out there. But I kept an open mind, and I started realizing there was a day and age when I thought, for example, that crystal healing was bunk. I've actually come to understand, I have a very scientific understanding of how they work and why they do. There's actually scientific evidence showing that they do store broadcast energy, and they can record energy. Particularly, they can record thought energy. Now, think about this: if we had a technology in which we could have a symbiotic relationship in which we store our highest thoughts while we're in deepest meditation, our highest intentions, and then have that mirror that back to us. Mm-hmm. That's the future technology that I see, where we actually have a technology that interacts with consciousness, that is conscious itself, mm-hmm. and is itself not only conscious, but super conscious.
Yeah.
Literally an expression of super consciousness, and is in symbiotic relationship with us. And so I began to see that a lot of these different types of things that often get, now I'm not going to say that I practice crystal healing. I don't carry crystals around. Mm-hmm. But I found that I can take those, and using this proprietary technology that I've developed on the computer, I can run them through the signal capture, where I capture the actual signature of, say, rose crystal, rose quartz, for example, and then I can import that into another software that I had developed and amplify that signature over and over and over again to the point where it becomes palpable. I can store that signature in a unique way on a flash drive, such that I don't even have to plug the flash drive in. It creates a field itself, and there are actual health benefits, and I'm finding actual positive effects towards evolving one's consciousness. That various types of crystals, for some reason, are able to. Part of it is their tetrahedral lattice makeup on the molecular level. On the molecular level, they're made up of all these crisscrossing and perfectly aligned tetrahedrons. Okay, and it's a lattice network. Now, we use crystals in all of our computing technology for a reason. In the aqual sense, thought is going to have a body, right? It has to have a subtle energetic counterpart. So you might think of it as a micro-vibratory body. So it turns out that subtle energies interface with cyberspace. They interface with our digital world.
Yeah.
So it may, and if you, there's a whole study really of how subtle energy interacts with technology. William Tiller did, who's a Stanford physicist, did a series of experiments where he's a long-time meditator, been meditating about 50, 60 years. I think he's getting close to 90 years old now. And he and 3 other long-term meditators would go into a deep state of meditation. He had designed a small electrical circuit. And he discovered that, and actually there was research done years and years ago by von Reichenbach in the late 1800s showing that subtle energy would travel through electrical circuits, just like electricity. He created this small circuit, and he and his fellow meditators would imprint a specific intention on that circuit. One of the experiments they did was the intention was to shift the pH of a water to a certain decimal degree. And it had to be a specific glass of water. So if there were 3 or 4 glasses of water sitting next to each other, it had to only be one of them specifically that would shift this pH. And he points out that when you shift the pH just a minor degree, it can be a matter of life and death. So they'd imprint it, and they'd take the circuit, put it in a box, ship it off to a lab, set it in front of several glasses, and sure enough, one of those glasses would have its pH shifted to just that degree. They did this with other types of organisms, bacteria. He also found when he had this box in a lab, and he would bring in a random number generator that was powered by quantum noise, the noise in the quantum field, that it would become more ordered in the presence of that. So the intention had a subtle energetic counterpart, a subtle energetic body that was highly ordered. It was coherent, because when there's the profound state of meditation, imagine if we could literally record our most profound states of inspiration, most profound states of connection, and feed them back to us.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Eric, when you're talking about those experiments in the 1800s, I mean, that technology is so primitive compared to what we have today. And I wonder if there's any inferences or just your experience in using this connective technology, such as the internet, in transferring subtle energies.
Oh, I have yet to do a lot of that in terms of there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah.
So the idea would be, so for example, we're going to be having when people are watching this, we're going to be having a digital Shaktipat is actually playing in the background. It's silent, but the energy is being broadcast. In fact, I'm going to turn my copy of it on right now. I had to turn it off a little bit because I've been working with it all night. I've been working on this. It's not quite ready, actually. But I just wanted to give people a sneak peek here. And
so is this what you're working on right now? This is like the latest.
Yeah, this is what I'm working on right now. And so when this is playing, when people are watching this broadcast, there are non-local carriers embedded in this energy matrix. So as people are watching this, this is the first time I've ever done this, but the way it should work is, as people are watching this, and the more people who are watching it at the same time, we're all being connected non-locally, such that all the each copy of digital Shaktipat energy that's being played will multiply itself, and it should amplify. So if we have 2,000 people watching this at the same time, the energy should get really, really, really palpable.
Eric,
now I've experienced it in other ways. So, for example, I have now to make this process a little bit more plain. Again, what I essentially do, and I can get into the techniques, but it's basically a three-step process. We capture the subtle energetic signature digitally, and we amplify it because once you capture it, it's due to the way modern technology works. It's always a weak signal, even if the original signal that was captured was really strong. Once it's captured digitally, it's always a weak signal. So then we have to feed it into our the software we've had developed that will feed that signal back on itself over and over and over again, and it becomes a very time-intensive process. Now, once we've done that, then we can embed the resulting signature into various audios, pictures, digital media, and even physical objects. Now, what happened, because of that, because it's such a time-intensive process, I have to have the amplification process going all the time. For example, digital Shaktipat, I've been working on this for a year and a half. I put thousands of dollars into this, at least a couple thousand hours, and I still want to make it even stronger. Okay, it's just a very time-intensive process. So what ends up happening is while that process is running, and let's say I have to go take a trip. Well, I can feel the energy that when I'm on the whole trip, because what's happening is these non-local carriers that are in these signatures. They are broadcasting to around the desk where all my DNA is, right? My sweat and the oils from my body and all that. So that when those non-local carriers connect with my DNA, it is as though I was there in the room. I mean, to me, I've experienced this every single day for years now. And non-locality is so normal to me, I don't even think about it. But there is a whole not well enough known body of scientific evidence out there showing, for example, the existence of distant healing, the existence of telekinesis,
absolutely. I
the
believe
existence of extrasensory perception. And I'm convinced that in every one of those, these non-local carrier waves that are essential to the work that I do are facilitating that non-local communication. Our living life force bodies, I believe, are the most highly tuned subtle energy detectors in the universe, because that's what we are. We are subtle energy. We are life force. We are consciousness. And if you're going to use instruments to detect life force and consciousness, the instrument has to have life force and consciousness in it in order to enter resonance with it. And that's why I predict that electromagnetism by itself will not work.
Our AI, just repeating algorithms, the way that we process information won't suffice either.
Right. And I really foresee a time, and it's certainly necessary, where we begin all of our technology becomes organic in the sense that it's literally living and has life force and consciousness in it, and it expresses life force and consciousness.
So some kind of carbon-based technology.
Yeah, for example, I have an idea for a type of bracelet that could be put on your wrist, right over your acupuncture meridians, that you can load with various certain types of subtle energy samples. It will interface with your life force running through you. And when you project your life force through your arm into this device, and you load it with a specific subtle energy, which will be the subtle energy gradient that it's testing for, and you aim your life force at whatever you're testing to see if that particular gradient is present there, then this device will enter into resonance with your own life force. And if your life force, your vital body, enters into resonance with the thing you're testing, it will set off a light in the bracelet, right? And that's really simple example. It's really super, super simple. But I foresee a day when our vehicles are powered by our life force.
Wow.
Why not? Why not? And why shouldn't it be? We want a green world. How green can you get? Right? It's kind of radical, but that's just the kind of stuff, the kind of crazy stuff that gets me inspired.
Well, I had an experience about, I don't know, a couple of months ago. Todd Jason, who was also, we interviewed as a part of this Spiritual Technologies 2.0, has this site called Amplifield. And it's a place where people can meditate together. When you're talking about the non-local, basically, for those who don't know, it just means that things can happen at long, almost infinite distance simultaneously without any accounting for how that happened. There's
Sure.
there's no beams that are being sent out or whatever. And I led a guided meditation where actually using iAwake technology, tracks that you had developed with subtle energy and other stuff in it.
Mm-hmm.
And like 250 people, just 250 people all over the world. You have this website where you can see the world and see where people are. And boy, it was one of the most powerful. I mean, it was really thick. The presence was just really super, super strong. And I think that's really related to, what you're talking about. And Ken Wilber once said that the future economy is going to be based on subtle energy. And I don't even know what that means.
I can tell you. I mean, there's going to be a day and age, where copyrights go right out the door because you can't copyright subtle energy. Well, you can't copyright that. I mean, because we're copyrighting energy all the time. Well, you have to copyright. No. There's going to look. The world can go in two ways. I see it: straight to hell or straight to heaven. Really, I see. That our highest potential eventually, as you know, for example, the first integral philosopher that I'm aware of was Aurobindo, and his whole idea of supermind, which is a subtle body, right? It's a causal body. That the idea was to awaken to supermind, but to bring it down into this world is such that it literally transforms the physical body such that it does not die anymore. Now, there is research showing when we go into these coherent energetic states, Glenn Ryan did a study where he would go into these profound states of empathy, as measured by the Institute of Heart Math. Right, these coherent heart states, and project that onto DNA, and it would literally affect the DNA. So it's likely when we enter into these coherent states, it's creating a feedback system between our own DNA. Now, because there are links between our DNA and all DNA, if there was a time where we could literally tap into supermind, bring it down into this world, into our bodies, such that it transformed our own bodies, would have to be there's such a connection between us and the rest of the physical world that the rest of the physical world would have to follow suit. It could, I envision the possibility where literally the whole idea of poverty and suffering would have to, in itself, be swallowed up in this bliss. And it would literally change the physical nature of things. And I used to think that was a New Age idea, and I'm sure a lot of people still believe that.
What you're saying about of DNA and the changeability is there's all kinds of interesting things going on there. In other words, if you're an addict, you can see how that change of DNA, and if you get in recovery, you can see that change.
You can shift it. You can shift it and change it. It's a fascinating idea that I'm more and more fascinated with.
Eric,
yeah.
Is there anything that you have now available that the people listening to this can avail themselves of your work? Of course, there's lots of stuff on iAwake, but the latest stuff that you're doing.
Sure. Right now, as I said, we have digital Shaktipats playing in the background. It's silent; you can't hear it, but the energy's going. I'm getting high as a kite as we speak. And should be digital Shaktipat should be ready soon, but at this point I can't really say when. That's my baby. That's where I'm really pushing for. But digital Shaktipat should be ready soon, and basically what it will consist of is the digital Shaktipat energy. Probably going to make this a 2 or 3 CD set. And it will be basically just 2 or 3 different soundtracks because people get bored with the same soundtrack over and over again. And each CD will have 2 tracks on them. It'll be a 60-minute track for long meditations and 20-minute track for shorter meditations. And these CDs will feature nothing but subtle energy. What's cool about them is, hey, look, man, I realize that you guys are a brainwave entrainment business. You're interviewing a lot of other brainwave entrainment businesses or a few others. And so I like it that I'm not in direct competition because this can perfectly complement PMP, HoloSync, Jeffrey C. Thompson's work, whatever, because I think it all has value. And what's cool about it is, like I said, this is playing in the background silently right now. So you don't even have to have sound. You can just put it on loop. If you love silent meditations, you can put it on loop. You could open up more than one copy. This is the cool thing about this too. You get the power to amplify it to your heart's content. You don't have to buy multiple levels. Once you buy it, it'll last you for life.
Whether you're studying for an exam or you're meditating, even with brain entrainment technology, you add this. I mean, it's something.
Yeah, if you're in an interview and you're like I am right now, but it's just a wonderful, wonderful energy that is it's really my service. This has been my passion to get this out there to, as best I can, in a digital form, to emulate the Shaktipat meditation experience. And what makes it interesting and unique, there are a lot of different things. So there's multiple gradients of subtle energies that are imbued in this recording. So, for example, with lots of brainwave entrainment, you will tend to, the brainwave entrainment will tend to focus on one brainwave at a time. There are a few out there that will maybe mix 2 brainwaves at a time, which can be difficult to do with most types of brainwave entrainment because the sound signals will get confused. The cool thing with subtle energy is you can, it's so subtle, it's so flexible that you can do things with it that you can't do with sound. So one of the things that we have in here is it's got the whole smorgasbord of brainwaves. It's got alpha, theta, delta, and epsilon. And when you start to experience the samadhi aspects of it, then you're going to be experiencing spikes into gamma. So it's got that all running simultaneously. We've got signatures in there. I'm really, really thrilled with this one. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Buddha relics. John, have you heard of those?
No, I haven't.
There are different Buddhist organizations out there that will do tours where they have Buddha relics. So basically, have you ever heard of the incorruptibility of the saints?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the phenomenon.
Like Yogananda.
Exactly. That happens across different religious traditions. There are various Buddhas over the centuries whose bodies also have not decayed, or certain aspects, like a finger, or the blood has turned into pearls, little red pearls, and they actually have an energetic current that if you're very sensitive, you can feel it, the consciousness emanating from these things. And they will do tours. And William Tiller actually used one of his little circuits I told you about to capture that. Well, I was able to capture that signature and amplify, and that is it's one of the hallmark signatures in digital Shaktipat.
I went some years back, and I'm a big fan of St. Francis of Assisi, but I wasn't expecting much beyond just kind of a historical, view of this beautiful city, and I was just blown away energetically. Totally not expecting it, totally not buying in that whole thing, and I was just in the tomb of Francis and lots of places he were hanging.
Yes,
there, and I was just heat and
absolutely. It's real. The biggest research that's been done on all that has mostly been dowsing, but there have been other types of research, for example, where they take these quantum noise random number generators, for example, into holy sites, for example, and they become more ordered and less random. And again, that is because these higher consciousness energies are highly coherent, highly, highly ordered. They attract order out of chaos. That is basically my theory of how somehow I stopped getting depressed.
Hey, can I leave space for Javi? He's been sitting here very patiently.
Yes.
And if you have any comments or questions for Eric, great.
Well,
how you doing, Javi?
Hi. It's just been fascinating. I've got a question that maybe I just hope that people will like, which is that most technology we use nowadays is not necessarily life-affirming, and your products can counteract that, and subtle energies could play a big role on changing that. Can you please share something about this?
About
how subtle energies could be key in reversing the technology that we use nowadays.
Oh, sure. And I can tell you, I will just tell you right now that what I'm going to touch on is probably just the tip of the iceberg, because at times, even when I think about, and again, obviously I'm biased, okay, but this is my passion for a reason. And when I think about this kind of stuff, the potential just literally boggles my mind. And when I try to grasp and express the potential that I feel and sense, I often just feel like I'm groping. I can't. Often it seems very difficult. But let's get started. Now, there's research done in Russia on a phenomenon called torsion. If you look it up in Wikipedia, it'll tell you it's a pseudoscience. Wikipedia does not know what the hell it's talking about. And I will tell you that there are probably people in the world who've already understood the potential power of torsion and don't want you to get it. And they don't want you to know it. I do believe there's a suppression of the science, but there is a huge body, mostly Russian, of research on torsion. In short, torsion is subtle energy. They found that there is a phenomenon called left-hand torsion and right-hand torsion. Left-hand torsion is detrimental to living systems. Right-hand torsion is beneficial to living systems. So electromagnetism in most of its forms, and also including toxic earth energy lines, another supposedly New Age idea that I once used to excuse as complete baloney. But there's actually been lots of research done in Europe where they show that they had a large instance of cancer where these communities were having cancer. They were living on these particular toxic earth energy lines. And if they would just move their beds away from these lines so that they weren't sleeping on them, and it's a kind of electromagnetic energy, a kind of magnetic energy, that actually their health issues clear up.
Is that the same thing the Chinese are talking about in feng shui?
Kind of, yes. It's related. And again, it has to do with us becoming more conscious in how we build our architecture, where we place it.
Yep.
We place it on a power spot that has natural, positive, beneficial energy, and then you create a living structure that's designed to channel that subtle energy signature in a way that actually evolves consciousness while you're living in your house. Wouldn't that be a cool way to live?
Yeah, I lived in a geodesic dome for a while, and I sure got a lot of songs written, and there was a lot of things going on. Really, I'm absolutely convinced that, and again, there's a good body of scientific evidence to support this. But getting back to the electromagnetic fields, what we found is, what they found was the electromagnetic fields almost always produce left-hand torsion, detrimental subtle energy. Now, in radiesthesia, as you guys are going to be interviewing Dr. Ibrahim Karim. Right.
I trained with him. I trained with him over.
I remember that. 2
or 3 years. Neat fellow. You'll like it. He's a really cool guy. And in radiesthesia, and we talked about that physical dowsing, when you use a neutral pendulum, if you get a clockwise spin when you're testing a certain subtle energy, that means you've got right-hand torsion. Beneficial.
That's a good one.
If you get a clockwise, you've got left-hand torsion. But see, but the Russians didn't know anything about that. They developed their science independently. Torsion is probably it should be the fifth force in physics. It is subtle energy. It is the body of consciousness itself.
All right.
It is the causal body. Yeah. It is various forms. There are different types of torsion. So it's probably at the causal level of gravity, of the strong and weak nuclear forces. And it probably is playing a role in electromagnetism as well. It is at the causal level of spiraling galaxies, orbiting planets, the curvature of the Earth. Torsion is very profound, but you're not going to hear about it in mainstream physics. His model is this torus. But we see this torus, it's coming up everywhere. And it's not just a New Age idea. I thought when I saw it in Thrive, I thought, oh yeah, another New Age idea. I am convinced that this torus movement, the way energy feeds back on itself and twists and turns, So it's a feedback system. So consciousness is always feeding back on itself, and that's how it's learning.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's evolving, moving back up, recycling, evolving, moving back up, and again through this twisting, spiraling, hello, movement, spiral dynamics, hello.
Yeah, you know, I took a picture.
Torsion movement.
I took a photograph the other night, and I was trying to get the light from a lamppost in the snow, and it was very foggy, and I had my flash was on, unbeknownst to me, and I took the picture, and I got the stuff that was in the foreground, but in the background rather, but in the foreground there were these patterns in the fog that were completely amazing. I mean, there were all kinds of things and spirals and tubes and stuff like that I'd never seen in fog.
Yes.
It was this very mysterious looking picture. I'll send you a copy of it.
Well, you know, John, I don't claim to have figured it all out, but there's definitely a connection between this spiraling, torsion movement, spirals, torsion, curving, twisting, turning, and consciousness itself. And basically what I'm convinced is basically what healthy subtle energy does is it emulates that movement. If you're really sensitive, for example, when you're using some of the energy tools that we produce, you will feel it as a kind of, you'll feel it as a pressure wave. And you'll often feel a kind of twisting and turning around the third eye area. But the idea is that if our subtle energetic and causal environments were always resonating at this higher consciousness level, this higher energetic level, this higher right quadrant correlate of the highest and healthiest states of evolutionary consciousness, then we would naturally, I think, just evolve more easily because our environment is mirroring back to us that which we already are. We don't see that. There's a big thing, you know, now in our culture called environmentalism, but there's little to no awareness of the subtle and causal environments. We think that if we just change the physical environment, make it more green, and sometimes our ideas of what's green and what isn't, doesn't really reflect a skillful knowledge of the subtle and the causal. And I think we've got to get those right first.
Well, Eric, I think that might be a good place to sum this up. It's very, very inspiring, and I kind of really reflects what you've been doing all these years. I mean, and your passion, your vision, the breadth of your learning is anyway. It's really.
Well, I really appreciate it, brother. And like I said, you know, you guys came along at a time in my life where if you hadn't come along, look, it would have taken me a lot longer to be at the place I'm at now. So, eternal gratitude for that.
And like I said, every day I'm blessed with your work. I use it in my practice every day, and I am, you know, I'm a depressive. You know I can totally relate what you're talking about. I don't know if I'm cured, but I've learned to deal with it as part of my path.
Sure.
And to bless the darkness and be present with it. And I move through it much more quickly. It's more intense, I think, for short periods of time. But it's been.
That's because you're feeling it. You're really feeling it.
I'm totally open to it. And the daily practice and the technologies that you developed and we're still developing.
Yes.
Tremendous tools. And
I think we're just getting started personally. I think, you know, and this whole, thing of traditionalists, not that I'm against tradition by any means, but,
Sure.
there's sometimes in some of these wisdom traditions, there's resistance to technology. Now, they'll use cell phones, they'll use computers, but, oh no, I can't use brainwave entrainment because I can't use anything outside myself. Well, please, name for me one thing that is outside yourself.
Yeah.
Please try.
There you go. Yeah.
And
Ken
please
said
name for me one thing that isn't technology.
Ken said one time, it's not, the problem is not having a big ego, it's having one that's not big enough,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
hey,
I mean, hey, love you, brother. Thank you,
love
guys.
you too, man.
So we're just going to take a few minutes to turn our attention inward. And when it comes to the subtle senses and becoming aware of subtle energy, one of the best ways to do that is to turn your attention inward, because we have various gating mechanisms in our nervous system that are designed to filter out stimuli. So we're kind of conditioned not to be aware of subtle energy, to be just aware of the information that's, or a certain limited aspect of what's coming through our five senses. So when we turn our attention inward, we're going to be able to more readily focus our attentional resources and thereby be more aware of this energy, the Shaktipat energy. And it helps us to sort of intensify our awareness of the energy. So if you would, you see the mandala on your screen now. So just take a deep breath and allow yourself to just very gently gaze toward the center of the mandala. Just let your shoulders relax. Gently gaze at the center of the mandala. If your attention wanders, just notice it and bring it back to the center of the mandala. Now allow your attention to rest on the mandala as well as your breath. You might even see yourself breathing in the energy of the mandala into your nostrils and taking the energy of the mandala into your eyes. Just feel the energy as it courses through your biofield and through your nervous system. Feel your own energy and your chi moving through your body. And feel the atmosphere around you being blessed and sanctified. What are you feeling? You may notice different sensations. You might notice a slight twirling or movement at the area between the eyebrows. If you happen to feel that, you can sort of also let your attention rest at that area just above and between the eyebrows. You don't have to strain your eyes or anything to do that. Just notice it with your attention. And if you'll let your attention kind of, like if you had a camera, and if you want to bring something into focus, all you have to do is just tweak that lens just ever so slightly. You don't have to turn it very hard at all. Just let your attention focus there in that center of the area between the eyebrows. And just kind of allow your awareness to sort of be sucked into that little vortex there. You may notice a tingling feeling in the heart area or on the surface of your skin. Allow your awareness to be aware of that energy movement. Become aware of your life force moving through you. Just allow yourself for a moment to get in touch with that invisible life force that's beating your heart. There's something in you that's beating your heart without you having to tell it to do so. There's something in you moving your life force through you. There's something in you attracting you to develop yourself, to know yourself. What is that? Let your attention go there. Just take in the vista of the mandala and allow that energy, take it into your eyes. This is a kind of darshan. You're literally communing with the life force of awakened consciousness. Breathe it in, soak it in. Imagine your spine is an antenna attracting this sanctified and blessed and elated energy into yourself. If your mind wanders, if your thoughts are wandering, your mind's wandering, just deflect them back to this mandala. Just allow everything to be directed back to this mandala. Breathe the energy in through the area between your eyebrows. Concentrate your focus there. Breathe the energy into your heart. Feel it expanding with light. It can also be helpful to take an inner posture of being open to receive. You might even put your hands out in what might be called the baby mudra, where you're holding a baby. And just say to yourself, I'm open to receive. I'm open to receive. Now, as we do this meditation, the mandala is broadcasting the energy of digital Shaktipat through your computer and through your monitor. That field is interfacing with the electromagnetic field of the device that you're using to watch this broadcast. And it's literally turning your electronic device into a Shaktipat device. It's broadcasting the energy of Shaktipat directly into your field. We talked about earlier that the energy of the Buddha relics is one of the signatures that's included in this energy that you're feeling right now. And the energy you're feeling is not just from outside of you. It's awakening your own energy. It's turning on your own energetic capacity to realize yourself, to know yourself. We have in here also the signatures of a monastic setting. a signature that is associated with the incorruption of the saints. We have, of course, all the different brainwave patterns: alpha, theta, delta, epsilon, and even glimpses of higher beta and gamma at times are all in this energy that you're taking in right now. And now, just be aware of what you're feeling. Observe the state you are in. Pay attention to it. Soak it up. Soak it up. What state are you in? What is observing the state you are in? Observe the observer observing. Pay attention to the consciousness that's observing. And when you back up enough in your own consciousness to observe yourself observing, then observe yourself observing yourself observing. And the more you do this, the more you are developing your consciousness. And now to end the meditation, in this heightened state, okay, send blessings to your spiritual teachers, to your parents, to your pets, to your children and your loved ones. Send spiritual blessings to people who may have offended you, to someone who you may be bad at or have a problem with, or maybe you've been in judgment of someone. Send them this blessing. Send them this love, unconditional. No attachment. Just a free offering. Send this feeling, this blessing to everybody who's suffering in the world right now. People who are suffering from homelessness. Maybe family members or loved ones who are sick or ill. Send these blessings to anyone who would hurt themselves or another. To all our world leaders. Whether you like them or not. You might not like President Obama. Send him blessings anyway. Send him love anyway. You might not like ISIS. Send them love anyway. And slowly readjust to being in the room. Welcome back.